It all started quietly, like a small ripple across a vast ocean of political power. Letitia James had become a rising star in the Democratic Party, known for her bold stance as New York's Attorney General and her high-profile legal battles against former President Donald Trump. Her efforts to hold the powerful accountable earned her both admiration and criticism. But as with any political figure who dares to challenge the establishment, the higher she rose, the more dangerous the game became. In the heart of New York, the streets were buzzing with speculation. Late-night talk shows and political pundits were all over the news, discussing James' latest moves, but no one saw the storm on the horizon. Behind the scenes, enemies from all corners were beginning to circle. It was a typical Tuesday morning when the first shockwaves hit. Letitia James, standing tall and confident as ever, was blindsided by a stunning revelation. Sources close to the investigation revealed that her office was now the subject of a sprawling legal inquiry. The investigation wasn't about her office's handling of cases or her personal actions in any of her public legal battles, it was about something far darker, something that no one had anticipated. A secret financial transaction from years ago had resurfaced, linking her to an obscure real estate deal that had been buried deep in the recesses of her campaign records. It was a deal that had slipped under the radar for months, but now, like a ticking time bomb, it had exploded into the public eye. The question on everyone's lips, had James knowingly violated ethics rules, or was this a targeted smear campaign designed to undermine her authority and political future? But as the scandal unfolded, one thing became clear: this was no ordinary legal debacle. This was something much more personal, something far more intricate. Who was behind this mysterious financial transaction? And how far would James go to clear her name in the midst of mounting pressure? The twist? The real shock was still to come. As news of the investigation spread, Letitia James found herself trapped in a whirlwind of political chaos. The media pounced on the story, magnifying every detail, no matter how insignificant. Headlines screamed about a scandalous real estate deal and legal turmoil threatening to topple one of the most powerful women in New York politics. James, known for her poise and unshakable confidence, appeared in front of the cameras for the first time since the investigation had been revealed. She stood firm, deflecting questions with the practiced grace of a seasoned politician. Her office released a statement, calling the claims baseless and false, but the damage was already done. The public's perception was shifting, and whispers of corruption were beginning to take root. Behind the scenes, though, a darker plot was unfolding. As James' legal team scrambled to uncover the origins of the transaction, they discovered something chilling: the deal wasn't just an isolated mistake or a lapse in judgment. It had been orchestrated by someone close to her inner circle, someone she had trusted completely. The investigation soon revealed that the real estate transaction had been part of a larger, intricate web of financial dealings. Money had been funneled through a series of shell companies and complex financial structures, making it nearly impossible to trace the true origin of the deal. But one thing became clear: this wasn't some simple mistake, it was part of a calculated plan to bring down James. Her enemies, both within and outside her own party, had been lying in wait, gathering information on her every move. They knew exactly how to manipulate the public's trust, how to exploit the smallest crack in her armor, and they were now using this real estate transaction as the key to their assault. And then, the twist: an anonymous tip surfaced, leading investigators to a shocking new lead: a connection between James' real estate deal and a powerful, shadowy figure who had ties to some of the most notorious financial institutions in the world. This individual, whose name had never before appeared in any of the public records, had been pulling the strings from the shadows, using their influence to move vast amounts of money in ways that should never have been allowed. Who was this figure? Why had they targeted James specifically? And more importantly, how far would this person go to ensure that their plan succeeded? With each new revelation, James realized that the stakes had escalated far beyond what she had ever imagined. The forces behind this legal storm were far more dangerous than she had anticipated, and they were closing in fast. As the days wore on, the tension in Letitia James' world only intensified. The walls seemed to be closing in around her. The media circus had reached a fever pitch, with every news outlet speculating about the mysterious figure pulling the strings in her downfall. Her reputation, once one of ironclad resolve, was now cracking under the weight of accusations and uncertainty. In her private moments, James couldn't help but wonder if this was the end of her career. The legal battle was turning into a full-blown political war, and with every passing day, the cost of fighting back seemed to grow exponentially. Her legal team worked tirelessly, digging through the mountain of evidence, trying to make sense of the cryptic financial records and obscure paper trails. The mysterious figure behind the real estate transaction, known only by a series of aliases and shell companies, remained elusive, as if they had carefully crafted their actions to stay just out of reach. Whoever they were, they knew exactly how to cover their tracks. Then, a breakthrough came. One of the team's investigators had found a pattern in the transactions, a connection between the money involved in James' deal and a series of large political donations. Donations that had been funneled to organizations with deep ties to both conservative and moderate factions within her own party. These organizations had all played key roles in pushing back against her investigations into corruption. It was becoming increasingly clear, James wasn't just being targeted by a single individual. She had become the target of a larger conspiracy, one that spanned the entire political spectrum. The same people who had been trying to discredit her for years were now using this financial scandal as a weapon. Their goal was to destroy her credibility, to remove her from the political scene for good. But the more James learned, the more she realized just how far this went. The anonymous tip that had initially seemed like a lucky break turned out to be part of a larger plan to bait her into making a mistake. The tipster wasn't just a whistleblower, they were part of the operation. The intricate web of lies and manipulation had been set up to create doubt and confusion, forcing James into a corner where she would have no choice but to lash out or make a public misstep. In the dead of night, her phone rang. It was an encrypted message, sent through a secure line. The voice on the other end was familiar, but the words sent a chill down her spine. "We know who you're looking for. And we know what you're about to do. But if you want to survive, you need to understand one thing, you're not in control anymore." The message ended abruptly, leaving James frozen with fear and confusion. Was this a direct threat from the people behind the conspiracy, or was it simply an attempt to rattle her? Either way, she knew that whatever move she made next could be her last. As the days turned into weeks, James found herself at a crossroads. The legal battle had become personal, and the shadowy figures targeting her were more ruthless than she had ever imagined. In the world of politics, trust was a rare commodity, but now, even her closest allies seemed to be turning away. To survive, she would need to outsmart the very people who had set this elaborate trap for her. But could she trust anyone? And how far would she have to go to clear her name and protect herself? The twists and turns were only just beginning. The walls were closing in, and Letitia James knew it. Her every move was now scrutinized, her every word dissected. The pressure had begun to take its toll. Her once unshakable resolve was now being tested like never before. The phone calls, the meetings in back rooms, the whispers at every turn, it was all becoming too much. Her legal team had uncovered more disturbing details. The shadowy figure who had been behind the real estate transaction was starting to take shape. It wasn't just an anonymous financier from the shadows. No, it was someone much closer to her, someone who had once been a trusted confidant. Marcus Owens, a high-powered lobbyist with ties to both corporate elites and political operatives across the spectrum, had been working behind the scenes for months, weaving an intricate web of financial transactions to discredit her. Owens had been a key figure in James' early career, a man who had helped her navigate the murky waters of New York politics. She had trusted him, and now she realized that trust had been her undoing. Owens had used his extensive network to plant false leads, create fake paper trails, and generate media buzz, all designed to destabilize James. His influence was far-reaching, with connections to key players in both major parties, making him nearly untouchable. It was a betrayal of the highest order. As the realization dawned on her, James found herself in a chilling position. Owens wasn't just trying to bring her down politically, he was trying to destroy her personally. The financial missteps that had once seemed like a mere legal error were now clearly a part of his larger scheme to ruin her life. And it wasn't just the money that was at stake, it was her career, her reputation, her legacy. With no time to waste, James made a decision. She had to confront Owens. She couldn't let him control the narrative any longer. She'd worked too hard, fought too many battles, to let this man strip it all away. But the meeting would have to be handled carefully. She couldn't afford to make another mistake. The night before the meeting, a knock came at her door. A shadowy figure stood on her doorstep, a man she didn't recognize, but someone who had clearly been waiting for her. He handed her an envelope, sealed tight. Inside was a single page, with a simple message: "You are being watched. It's not too late to make this right." The note was unsigned, but the tone was unmistakable. James felt a chill run down her spine. The threat was clear, they were watching her every move. This wasn't just about the real estate deal or the political games being played. It was about power, control, and letting her know she was on the brink of losing it all. She had no choice now. She couldn't play it safe any longer. She had to confront Marcus Owens, take the fight to him, and expose the truth. But with so many eyes on her, so many forces working against her, would it be enough? The day of the meeting with Marcus Owens arrived, and Letitia James felt a tension in the air that she couldn't shake. Every step she took toward the secluded location, a private, nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, felt like a countdown. This meeting would be the turning point, one way or another. It would either be her redemption or her final downfall. She arrived early, her mind racing with the questions that had plagued her for weeks. Why Marcus? What had driven him to betray her? What was he trying to achieve by destroying her? She had trusted him, confided in him, worked with him for years. The notion that he had been orchestrating this entire mess was almost too much to bear. The building was dimly lit, the kind of place where no one would look twice, where deals were made in the shadows. Owens had chosen the location carefully, knowing that it would put her off balance. When James entered the room, he was already there, sitting at a small table with a glass of water in front of him. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm, like a man who knew that the game was already won. "Letitia," he greeted her, his voice smooth, almost patronizing. "I've been expecting you." Her pulse quickened. She was ready for this. No more games. No more running. She took a seat opposite him and locked eyes, refusing to let him see her unease. "What's this all about, Marcus?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I trusted you. You were one of the few people I thought I could rely on." Owens didn't immediately respond. He took a long sip of water, then set the glass down with deliberate care. "You were useful, Letitia. But like so many before you, you outlived your purpose." His smile was thin and cold. "You see, in this world, power isn't given. It's taken. And sometimes, people like you, people with good intentions, become obstacles. You became one. And that's why we're here." The words hit like a slap to the face, but James kept her composure. She wasn't going to let him manipulate her. "So, what's your endgame, Marcus? You think this will destroy me?" He chuckled darkly, leaning back in his chair. "It's not about destroying you, Letitia. It's about control. You've made a name for yourself as someone who can take down the powerful, but now, you're just another pawn in a much larger game. You think you're the only one who's been manipulated? You've been used, just like the rest of them. The only difference is that I'm the one pulling the strings." James' mind raced as she processed his words. The full scope of what was happening became clearer. This wasn't just about the real estate deal. This was about a larger political war, one that stretched across years and entangled countless figures in its web. Marcus wasn't just a rogue actor, he was a cog in a machine, one that sought to control New York's political future. You've gone too far, Marcus, she said, her voice low but firm. And I'm not backing down. I'll expose you for what you are. He laughed, the sound echoing eerily in the room. Expose me? You've already done that for me, Letitia. Do you think the public is going to side with you? Do you think they'll care about the truth when they've already been fed a story about your corruption, about your downfall? You're done. The narrative is already set. You'll never win this fight. For a moment, the air in the room felt thick, oppressive. James could feel the weight of the situation crushing in on her. But she wasn't going to let him have the last word. Not this time. You may think you've won, she said, rising from her chair. But I'm not the one who's going down. It's you. You've underestimated me, Marcus. And I'll make sure you regret it. Owens remained seated, his expression unchanged. We'll see. But remember this, Letitia, you're not in control anymore. As she turned to leave, James felt the full magnitude of the battle she was about to face. The forces arrayed against her were vast, powerful, and relentless. But she had one thing they didn't, the truth. And no matter how hard they tried to bury it, she was going to make sure it came to light. The days that followed were a blur of tense meetings, whispered phone calls, and a mounting sense of inevitability. Letitia James knew that the confrontation with Marcus Owens had been only the tip of the iceberg. She had exposed a small piece of the grander scheme, but the real battle was still ahead of her, and it was going to take everything she had to fight back. The media was relentless, hammering her with new stories, twisting every move she made. They painted her as the face of corruption, a woman brought down by her own greed and incompetence. With every passing hour, the whispers grew louder. The pressure was suffocating. Her legal team, once a bastion of confidence, had begun to show cracks. Some of her closest allies were now questioning her decisions, wondering if it was too late to salvage her reputation. The same people who had once rallied behind her were starting to distance themselves, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. But Letitia James refused to back down. She wasn't going to let Owens or anyone else define her. The truth was her weapon, and she knew that if she could find the right leverage, she could turn the tables. Her team had continued to dig, and they'd made a chilling discovery. A key piece of evidence had surfaced, a series of encrypted emails between Owens and several powerful figures, some of whom were involved in large-scale political campaigns and major corporate lobbying efforts. The emails revealed a much deeper conspiracy than she had initially imagined. Owens wasn't acting alone, he was merely a pawn in a much larger game. The emails contained detailed instructions on how to manipulate the media, how to strategically destroy political opponents, and, most alarmingly, how to target Letitia James specifically. The messages were proof that the forces aligned against her were far more formidable than anything she had anticipated. These weren't just local operatives or political rivals, they were power players on a national scale. But there was something else in those emails that stopped her cold. A name. It was a name she recognized immediately, and it sent a chill through her spine, Senator Richard Hawke. He was a seasoned politician with connections deep in both the Republican and Democratic establishments. He was a figure whose influence had touched nearly every major political decision in the state, and beyond. It became clear that Hawke had orchestrated much of the campaign against her. Marcus Owens had been his pawn, and now he had set his sights on taking down Letitia James for good. The revelations in those emails were a game-changer. It wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. It was about exposing the people behind this operation, including Hawke. James knew that to go public with this information would be dangerous. Hawke's influence ran deep, and he would stop at nothing to maintain his power. But the alternative was worse. If she stayed silent, the narrative would continue to be shaped by her enemies, and she would never get her life back. Her heart pounded as she picked up the phone. It was time to make the call that would change everything. She dialed the number for an investigative journalist she trusted, someone who had helped her in the past. After a few rings, the familiar voice answered. Letitia. I need you to listen carefully, she said, her voice steady despite the fear swirling inside her. I have information, something big. I need you to help me expose a conspiracy, and it's going to bring down some very powerful people. The journalist was silent for a moment, processing her words. This sounds risky. Are you sure about this? I'm sure, she replied. And I need your help to make sure the truth gets out. If we do this right, we can take down the people who've been manipulating everything from behind the scenes. But we can't wait any longer. They're getting ready to strike again. The conversation ended quickly, and James felt a sense of both relief and dread. The game had just shifted to a whole new level. She had the evidence. She had the leverage. Now, it was time to put it all on the line. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. The people she was about to challenge were ruthless, and they had resources that far exceeded her own. Yet, in the pit of her stomach, a fire burned. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about survival. She would fight with everything she had, and she would expose the conspiracy for all to see. Letitia James was ready to take the final step into the unknown. The battle was no longer just a fight for her career, it was a fight for the very soul of her future. The storm that Letitia James had been weathering for months had finally reached its apex. The conspiracy, once hidden behind layers of deception, was now on the verge of being exposed. The journalist she had trusted had gathered the final pieces of the puzzle, and the plan was set in motion. The truth, as dangerous as it was about to be revealed to the world. But as she prepared for the public release of the information, James felt a sense of unease settle in. She knew that this wasn't just about her reputation anymore, it was about something much larger. This wasn't just a battle for political survival, it was a fight for justice. The stakes had grown higher than she ever imagined. Her enemies were watching, waiting for her to slip up. Marcus Owens, Senator Richard Hawke, and the powerful figures behind the scenes would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. James had already seen the lengths they were willing to go to destroy her. But she was done playing their game. It was time to turn the tables. The night before the information was set to drop, she stood in her office, looking out over the city. The lights below shimmered, but she couldn't focus on their beauty. She was too focused on the war that was about to unfold. At precisely midnight, the journalist released the bombshell report. Every detail of the conspiracy, every link between Marcus Owens, Senator Hawke, and the hidden financial dealings that had manipulated the political system for years, was exposed in a detailed, damning article. The emails, the encrypted messages, the hidden ties, it was all laid bare for the world to see. The media erupted. News outlets across the country picked up the story, and the public's outrage was immediate. The very people who had tried to tear James down were now being exposed as the true architects of corruption. Marcus Owens, once a trusted ally, was now at the center of the storm, facing legal consequences that could destroy his career. Senator Hawke, the powerful puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows, was under investigation for his role in the conspiracy. But the fallout was only beginning. Within hours, investigations were launched, not only into the individuals named in the report but also into the deeper networks of corruption that had allowed such manipulation to flourish for so long. James' actions had set off a political earthquake, and the tremors were felt in every corner of the political establishment. For Letitia James, the battle was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more enemies to face, but she had achieved what no one had thought possible. She had taken down the people who had sought to destroy her, exposed the system of power that had been working against the truth, and emerged victorious. Standing in front of a sea of cameras at her first press conference since the revelations, Letitia James looked out at the crowd, her face resolute. She had fought for justice, and while the scars of the battle would remain, she knew that the truth had triumphed. The corrupt forces that had conspired against her had underestimated her resolve, and now they would pay the price. She raised her chin, looked directly into the cameras, and spoke, "This is just the beginning. No one is above the law, not me, not any of you. The fight for justice continues, and I will always stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. And with that, Letitia James stepped into the next chapter of her life. The battle was over, but the war for justice was just beginning.